And then we will have Rob as our budget director, and he's going to kick off our presentation.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the City of Tempe's Budget Planning Forum. My name is Robert Baer, Municipal Budget Director for the city. Joining me today is Lizette Camacho, Deputy City Manager, Wydell Holmes, Strategic Management and Innovation Director, and Shauna Warner, Neighborhood Services Director. Thank you so much for attending today's forum. The city is currently in the process of developing the operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 26-27 that begins July 1st, 2026. Today is an opportunity for you to provide feedback to the City Council and staff about the city's budget and budget priorities for the next fiscal year. In today's presentation, we will provide an overview of the city's budget process, the differences between operating and capital budgets, how resources are allocated, and how we use community input to influence our budget. And before we get too far in the presentation, we have a little video to show you guys.
The city of Tempe is a vibrant, energetic, and forward-thinking place, attracting millions of people who live, work, play, and learn here. What we do in Tempe is different than in any other city, but none of it is possible without a balanced budget that reflects Tempe's diverse community. A city budget provides a blueprint for how your tax dollars are going to be spent. It shows how much revenue the city is expecting to take in and how much money is expected to go out. There are actually two annual budgets, one for operating and one for capital projects. The operating budget is for routine and daily services such as police and fire, keeping the library open, park maintenance, recreation programs, and solid waste collection, to name a few. The capital budget is a plan for large infrastructure projects. It projects the budget over the next 5 years. Some examples of capital projects are Tempe Streetcar, park improvements like playground equipment, new buildings, and bike lane or road improvements. So where does the money come from for all these projects and services? There are a few different sources. One is property taxes collected from Tempe property owners. Another is sales tax, which is collected anytime you make a purchase in Tempe. City revenue also comes from construction projects, federal and state partnerships, as well as service fees. Some city services, including solid waste collections and water utilities, charge user fees to collect revenue. These are called enterprise funds, and that means the city must collect enough revenue from users to cover the costs of providing those services. So how does the Tempe City Council decide what projects and services to fund? The city has identified 5 strategic priorities: safe and secure communities, strong community connections, quality of life, sustainable growth, and financial stability and vitality. These priorities have several goals attached to them. Every project, every service need is weighed against those goals to help the council make its budget decisions. The city tracks its progress towards these goals with a comprehensive data dashboard that shows all of the work that's being done. And of course, Tempe residents are the most important part of the process. The city collects resident input from online surveys, pop-up events, city council meetings, and public forums. This input helps the council understand how the community wants its money spent. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into the city budget process. But the outcome is worth the effort. A balanced budget that works for everyone in the Tempe community.
So why does a city produce a budget? It is not much different than why people have a budget at home for their personal finances. A budget is a plan. Where should the money be spent? How much money is coming in and how much money is coming out? For the city, there are a limited amount of funds, and budget plans are how we manage how these funds are spent. It's a numbers exercise, but it is also a question of priorities. Since the city is funded through taxes and fees, from our residents and businesses, we need to be mindful of the limited resources the city has. The city wants to make sure it is spending money on the top priorities of the city and residents. And finally, like other Arizona cities and towns, Tempe is required by state law to adopt an annual budget, and that budget must be balanced. Here in Tempe, we develop the budget in a public process. Excuse me. The meetings are held in City Hall's City Council chambers in downtown Tempe. Our next public meeting will be on February 26th, where we will discuss proposed capital improvement program and provide an update on the long-range forecast. Public meetings continue each month until July, when the final budget is adopted. Specific meeting details are located on the website at tempe.gov/budgetplan. We'll have a slide at the end of the presentation with different websites where you can find information. The city considers several factors when developing the operating budget. First is the priorities of residents of Tempe and of our city council. The annual budget is aligned with council priorities and tied to performance measures. Resources are allocated to important needs and priorities of the community. We'll cover the community council priorities and performance measures a little later in the presentation. Next, we evaluate the operational needs to ensure that there is funding to maintain existing service levels and to increase in areas that are priorities. We also monitor economic trends and indicators to ensure the city's revenues are sustainable and make sound financial decisions. Lastly, we monitor legislation at the state and federal levels to evaluate potential impacts from reductions in city revenues or any unfunded mandates. Now we'll briefly talk about the operating budget. As you saw in the video, the city's operating budget controls the day-to-day operations of the city. Some examples of operating budget expenses are city staff, supplies for recreation programs, chemicals for safe drinking water, and landscape services for parks. The next chart represents the various categories of revenues for the city's general fund, which is the largest operating fund here in the city. Additionally, the general fund is the fund that council has the most discretion to direct the use of. The large examples of services funded out of the general fund include police, fire, community services. The current fiscal year began on July 1st and will end on June 30th. As you can see in the dark blue section with the 47%, the largest comes from our sales tax. The second largest share of revenue that we get for the general fund is in that light tan, that 25%, which is the portion of state sales tax, income tax, and vehicle license tax the city receives from the state. The pie chart also shows other sources of general fund revenues, which include property taxes, charges for service, and there's some other miscellaneous funding sources in there. This next slide shows a pie chart of the general fund expenses. As you can see, the largest slice of the general fund expenses go to police and fire services, which is 54% of total general fund expenses. The next one is 21% for community programs and community services. So that is parks, recreation, and the city's social services. Now we'll turn our attention to the capital budget. The capital budget is for large projects to maintain the city's existing infrastructure, such as fire stations, streets, parks, and water lines. Capital projects also include building new facilities, such as the recently completed Clark Park Pool and Recreation Center, as well as the streetscape project currently under progress along Mill Avenue. To develop our capital budget, our departments have asset management plans that monitor the life cycle of assets they own. Assets include things like streetlights, water lines, park playground equipment, city buildings, and the equipment inside them, to name a few. The capital budget also includes preventative maintenance to extend the life of the city's assets. On the right side is the funding mechanism for capital projects. We primarily use general obligation bonds, which are authorized by Tempe city voters. The most recent election in November of 24 included 3 bond questions. We asked the voters for authorization to issue $581.5 million in bonds to pay for capital projects, including new police and fire stations, improved roads, park enhancements, and affordable housing. The city is transparent with the community about where the money will, what the money will fund. We have been very fortunate here in the city that we have never had a bond election fail. This pie chart shows the CIP expenditures by category of project, aligning with the city's strategic priorities. The largest component in blue is 77%, which represents safe and secure communities. It covers categories such as parks, or police, fire stations, but also critical infrastructure that keep us safe, like roads and water infrastructure. The next largest slice is quality of life, which is largely made up of parks projects. This is a summary of the city's total current fiscal year budget, including both operating and capital. The top line is the capital budget, and everything below that line is comprised of the operating budget. Everything I just discussed is available in a user-friendly document called the Budget in Brief that explains the city's current operating and capital budget. This and other information is available on the Tempe budget website. Here at the city, we also take a long-term approach to our budgeting. So here is an example of the long-range forecast we produce for the city's major operating funds, this one being the general fund. So we want to make sure that we can not only maintain services in the next year's budget, but we also have a sustainable plan that maintains services over the next 5 years. The next topic I want to show is we are facing some local and state shared revenue losses. So one of the big things that happened this year, that we're experiencing this year, is the loss of residential rental sales tax collection. So for this fiscal year, we're projecting that impact at $20 million. We also have some other factors that are influencing the state shared revenues the city receives, including this incorporation of Santan Valley, which means there's another city in the valley that we have to share revenue with, and the potential impacts of something at the state called federal tax conformity, which would have a significant impact on general fund revenues as well. We also want to make sure that we include community engagement in our policy decisions. The city utilizes several methods to gather community input and feedback during the budget development process. We have our community survey, our annual community survey, our business survey, and our online Tempe forum, which is currently open until March 1st. This video highlights the projects and programs funded in the current year's budget.
Hi, I'm Mayor Corey Woods. Preparing and passing the city's annual operating and capital budgets is one of the most important things our city does. Our budget reflects funding for those programs and services that the community has told us are priorities through the annual community survey and other tools. Here are just a few examples of how we've used public input to make our city a better place. So last fall, you voted to use bond funds to accelerate the improvement of roads. Soon after, Tempe put that funding to work. Since the bond's passage, we have paved and improved about 25% of our city's roads. That's more than 200 miles. Our goal is to improve the overall condition of city roads within 4 years. Your vote also showed us that affordable housing was a top issue for you. You made your voice heard by approving $32 million designated to increase affordable housing in the coming years. These funds propel our work to ensure that Tempe remains a vibrant community with a diversity of residents and available housing options. And your input on city budgets allows us to invest approximately $2 million each year through Hometown for All and our nonprofit partner, the Tempe Coalition for Affordable Housing, to create even more housing opportunities. Ending homelessness remains a top priority for our community. Tempe continues to fund programs and services aimed at making homelessness rare, brief, and one-time. So just last year, Tempe invested approximately $55.6 million in street outreach, shelter, rent assistance, employment assistance, nonprofit grants, and other needs to address housing and homelessness. Our commitment to compassionate resources to help unsheltered people has resulted in a 46% drop in homelessness since the summer of 2022. You told us that improved police services and feeling safe in your neighborhood are among the highest priorities that you have. So we've set our priorities to match. Tempe Police opened its real-time operations center just last year. This technology allows officers to respond faster, get important information quicker, and solve crimes more efficiently. Knowing the officers in your neighborhood creates trust and can have a true positive impact on lowering crime. This is your budget. Your input and feedback as a resident or as a stakeholder truly matters. We invite you to take part in the budget planning process for the next fiscal year, which begins this coming July 1st. We want your feedback, and there are plenty of opportunities to get involved. We're right now going to be hosting several public meetings this spring where you can provide input. You can also visit tempe.gov/forum and tell us your top priorities for investing in our community. To get more information about all of this and the city's budget process, please visit tempe.gov/budget-plan or call Tempe 311.
So how does community input affect the budget? Input from business and community surveys, input from the forums, like you are participating in today, and input from the online budget survey. All feedback is provided to council during budget development process. Community and business surveys tell us about how we're doing on a significant portion of our performance measures as well. So your input is extremely important. And now I will hand it off to Wydell Holmes to cover Tempe City Council priorities.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited about our community's participation in our budget process. As Rob mentioned earlier, and he mentioned the CIP alignment to the council priorities, we have 5 priorities that are established by the City Council. They are thematic. For example, if you grow up in another community, how you define safe and secure or quality of life might look a little bit different. But the way that Tempe defines these 5 areas of priorities is through our performance measures. And we operationalize those with over 101 outcome-based, impact-based performance measures that have baselines, targets, strategies, action plans, etc. Next slide, please, Robert. So an example of this for feeling of safety in our communities is we actually measure not only, we actually measure sentiment data, so our feeling of safety in our neighborhood. We want all of our residents, our businesses, and our visitors to feel safe in their neighborhoods and the areas of the city that they're visiting. We also track and look at how we're doing on ending homelessness. And this is an aspirational goal in regards to reducing our homelessness to 0. The reason for this is that one person that is homeless in the city is one too many. And this also is reflective of not only City Council's priorities, but also informed by our community values. And then another example of a performance measure that operationalized the council priorities, sustainable growth and development, is our tree and shade canopy. And an example that we've had historically is to have a shade and tree canopy coverage of 25%. We've recently moved that to 18% based on best practices for that target. And we know that just planting trees, especially after the recent storm, is not the only way to get to canopy. So we also are looking at innovation in regards to engineered or man-made shade. So if you'd like to visit our performance measures, I invite you to go and explore all 101 plus performance measures at performance.tempe.gov. And that is an external portal that is available in multiple languages with data visualization, information about why these measures are important, as well as the strategies and actions that we've taken to try to achieve these outcomes. Next slide, please. So one of the input tools that we utilize in addition to our community and our business and our employee surveys and our public forums is a strategy tool for aligning resources for Tempe. And based on all of the 101 performance measures and the City Council priorities that are derived really from our community feedback, we have a tool that we send to the mayor and council. We also do this with our Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission, and it's similar to the tool that you'll be able to participate with on Tempe Forum. And basically, it's an early discussion on how do we prioritize our resources? How do we align them for our priorities as well as for regulations, health and safety, et cetera. The tool that we provide to City Council is called the START tool, and it's just to create an early discussion. Council is given a theoretical $100 to distribute across 101 performance measures. And it's not an allocation. It just gives us an early indication of where we should start putting our efforts as we're developing the city's operating and capital improvement program budgets. That data is shared with the City Council, both as a collective set of data and results, as well as their individual distributions across those performance measures. And we typically provide this in early December each year as part of our budget kickoff. So we start with where are our priorities and how do we align our resources during our budget process. Next slide, please. One of the items that also informs not only the START tool, but the budget process is the results from our signature surveys. An example, in 2025, we have our annual community survey. And what we try to look at is what items, what areas that our residents think are important, but maybe we haven't achieved high levels of satisfaction. So we always call that the opportunity of improvement. And you'll see here in the lower right-hand quadrant, in 2025, our community prioritized economic and business development, while important condition of city streets, we had less satisfaction. You'll recall that we are doing a accelerated pavement quality improvement projects across the entire city. Traffic safety was also something that the community said is very important, but not having the highest levels of satisfaction in comparison to other areas. So what we do is we take those items and we align them with where are our performance measures, where do we have gaps, and obviously this satisfaction importance rating creates a gap for us, and that is where we start to put our focus. Next slide, please. This is an example of the important satisfaction gaps that we realize in our 2025 business survey. We do the business survey every other year, and on those alternating years, we do the employee survey. But annually, we invite you to participate in the community survey online. We can mail you forms, so feel free to reach out if you're not getting those surveys. Our businesses had a couple of things that were very common with our community, and that was street maintenance, but they also and traffic on city streets. So you'll see a theme here, but they also had a couple other items where there was a gap in importance and satisfaction, and that was the overall feeling of safety in the city. We want our businesses, their employees, their guests to feel safe from the city. So we measure that through a couple of different ways. And then overall value of city tax dollars. So we know that the services that we are very pleased to provide, and it's a privilege for us as employees to provide it to our community. We're going to make sure that that's also creating value for you, whether as a resident or as a business. Next slide, please. So we pull all of that information together in the START tool. So we have performance measures, community survey results, business survey results, historic information. Is something meeting its target? Is it currently what we call accelerated, meaning hyper-focused on? And this is just an example of what the START tool looks like for the City Council. And they distribute dollars theoretically. They're not allocating at this point. But they're trying to get that early idea of where do they have consensus? Where might we need to explore a little bit more in regards to how we prioritize for our budgeting process? Next slide, Rob. And so from our exercise that we did based on the 2025 surveys and other data sets, we've prioritized for our fiscal year 26-27 feeling of safety in parks, feeling of safety in our neighborhoods, ending homelessness, our tree and shade canopy, as well as our quality of business services. And these were based on highest totals, averages, and at least 4 points from the council members, because we have a council of 7. And so we knew that we already had early consensus on these 5, and then as well as the highest median score. What we do with that is we create what we call a TAP team, and that is a Tempe Accelerates Performance. It is the ability for our interdisciplinary teams, both internal and external to the city, because we have strategy partners that come from all different areas across the city and across our community. And we put focus on training those teams on collaboration with strategy partners and shifting resources. As Rob mentioned earlier in regards to some of the conditions of our budget, whether it be revenue, more cities coming in to share the same pot of state shared revenues. We are not looking, when we put this hyper focus on at this point, looking at additional funding. We really want to get creative and be innovative on what do we need to shift around. Can we bring in other strategy partners to help us do this work? What would that look like? And so our team in Strategic Management and Innovation Office, we work with those 5 teams, which can be up to over 50 employees, because the teams work across departments and, like I said, across other agencies with the city. And we put a hyper focus on that. They meet every other week, and they do quarterly report outs to the city manager, soon to be also to mayor and council. And that way we're keeping on track and keeping our focus steady on what we've prioritized over the next fiscal year. We'll go to the next slide. So I'll just remind you, you have some resources that are online. We want to make sure that things are transparent and available to you. We have our budget plan. We have open books, which is basically like the checkbook for the city. We have the forum, which is where you can start participating in the budget process now, as Rob mentioned earlier. And then also look at how we're doing on our strategic plan at performance.tempe.gov. Now I will turn it back over to Rob.
All right. Well, thank you for attending.